Okay, this video is going to be a kind of combined response, and I'm going to try to make it as short as possible. So I'm going to present some information in general about the subject, and then I'll go on to comments that were left. Here we go. Someone said, thank you, you found the right photo, and that was the Dropbox I was referring to. I appreciate you answering my questions, etc. I don't need the photo to be faked. I also don't need the answer to be a certain way. There are 101 reasons that this doesn't add up to me. The case keeps tripping up on the idea of a simplest explanation tends to be the right one. I'm heavily paraphrasing this because of the nature of what was said and the tone. So we're going to continue from there. We're going to cover facts first because that's most important. Now, these are facts with a big quotation asterisk and all that other stuff. You have to go look the stuff up, and some of this is outdated data. So we're going to go ahead and do this. In 1992, in a study of 55,000 plus felony cases filed in the 75 largest USA counties, murder, we're going to be talking about in this YouTube video, 72% of the cases that were actually went to trial with full charges and a trial set date. That they're not qualifying people who pled out before a trial, and but that would also include trials where they had to show up in trial and technically be in trial even though they pled guilty. 72% of the cases, charges ended up in conviction. 27% of them pled guilty. 20% had 5 or more prior felony arrests of some kind. This is where the idea, but that's only 20%, this is where the idea that everyone's a repeat offender before a murder versus spur-of-the-moment ideas or whatever. 47% had previously been convicted of something. 56% had a felony arrest on record. 44% of the people who had committed murder had no prior record of any kind, at least with felonies mentioned, etc. Now that's according to a file from 1992, and you can read the text below. It literally ends in 92.txt. It's a text file. For once, I actually get a text file. UK average for prisoners in 2013 September of the population of 5,000 inmates surveyed. Average age versus crime versus number of prisoners. 30 years old for murderers, as 5,000 inmates, 31.2 years old for manslaughter, 285 inmates. And that's at a UK doc thing, and you have to open it up with a doc viewer. You can also Google the subject, murder suspect had no prior criminal history, and get X number of results. This usually alludes to serial killer cases because people bring up as an anecdote that most people who have no prior convictions end up being fantastically good candidates for people who are prior, but successful murderers. And or people being caught the first time and then they find evidence that they were going to be a serial killer or not. Bryan Kohberger had no criminal history. A lot of people, including an infamous mass murderer, had no criminal history. But the presumption here is that there has to be a criminal history. This is considered when there's sentencing or convictions and such. But a lot of murderers really do just decide they're going to go off and do something after, not just on the spur of the moment, but sometimes they are, but usually because they've been plotting and planning it for a long time because of something very important. Mental illness and or a deep-seated, unfulfilled something, usually hatred, or a problem they had and that they can't get past. Let's move on. Claim of a incident in Delphi. A person who was found had hair from another person in her hand. Defense attorney then claimed, before that was identified, that the police found in the person's hand a single strand on October 15th, 2024, a single strand of hair from an unknown female. Then by the 28th of the same month, the hair was DNA consistent with the older sister of the other person who was killed. This is because of a selective reading, in my opinion, of the same report on the same day. Out of 80 hair samples collected at the scene, 72 had no root, which means they're very hard to DNA test, even for the FBI. And of the 8 out of 80, 10% rate that you get hair follicles, you get the hair root. Most DNA matched to either of the victims and or an animal, except one strand found wrapped around a finger of one of the victims that matched another person related to the other victim. A borrowed sweatshirt belonging to the other girl and her sister was with and or on one of them before they arrived at Mononhigh Bridge Trail. But this being a sweatshirt with a single human hair in it that didn't match either of the victims or anybody else involved in the subject equals we exonerate, or it has to be a family member. That little bit of data that it was a relative and it was on clothing that got transferred to a hand is important. Every other day I take my wallet out of my pocket, even though I'm going bald, I find a human hair from my head that long, because I have long hair and I'm bald on top. I call this a clear cut rather than a crew cut. And it gets everywhere. If you have dogs, hair gets everywhere. Every one of you who's taking care of your family members has found hair that didn't match you in your own clothing. If you share clothing or swap it back and forth, it will happen. And all it is that an example of someone being exonerated? One of the things you test for with DNA evidence is if the person had a close contact. Yes, so that would immediately disqualify that person's DNA unless you found some overwhelming, compelling evidence to say someone murdered their sister and a friend, because that's what you have to go for at this point. A borrowed sweatshirt, transferred material, because that's one of the most common ways for hair to transfer. Next, we have another statement. In one or two mixed security prisons with trustees and maximum security offenders, a person was brought in and placed under suicide watch and placed into solitary confinement. This person was Richard Allen, and was on the phone in a audio clip set of recordings talking to his mom and his wife and saying things to the effect, I did it or I'm guilty, basically confessing. 61 times total, but only some of them are the phone calls. The defense team claimed he was under mental duress when he made the statements, but there's 61 times it was said. Was this in one or both places? Those details are not forthcoming. When someone makes a claim like that, and okay, fine, this is the defense attorney. This is the same defense attorney that left out, oh, by the way, they were sharing clothing. So bringing up a quote-unquote unknown hair and then finding out, a little over 2 weeks later, oh, by the way, it was actually checked and found. And still hay has been made of it. Was being in a mixed security prison that has a maximum security wing the same as being in a state maximum security prison? Was this solitary confinement, because suicide watch happened, inappropriate? Was this person drugged out of their mind? Was this person under duress by being in solitary confinement? Should the confession be thrown out? I'm going to give you a personal opinion. I do not like confessions being used against someone in any way. I don't like it. There's too much room for abuse. I would toss it out. But having this occur 61 times and it being among staff, people sometimes recording it, to a psychiatrist, this gets a little excessive. But okay, let's go forward. But still, I do have a problem with confessions being the basis, and I want, in the case of Richard Allen, the data on this, quote, unspent bullet, as it keeps being said by the press. It's called a cartridge or casing. In this case, a cartridge because it hadn't been fired. That just means a cartridge was found there. What is the evidence leading back to, quote, the gun? What is it? Not disclosed. The same complaints I have entirely about this and every other case. If you're going to present information to the public requesting help, don't leave them hanging when they ask, hey, where's the data? Claim. They're presumed innocent under our legal system until they've had a trial and have been found guilty by a jury of their peers. Just because someone's accused of crime doesn't make them guilty. I'm aware of these things. Goes without saying. He was drugged while being housed in solitary confinement against his will in a maximum security state prison. I'm inserting some words here. This is not direct quotes here. This is paraphrased to hell. As a pretrial detainee, but he confessed 61 times? Has that ever happened before? What you're describing may or may not have happened before. What really has been described as being happening to him by his own defense attorneys does not match drugged out of his mind, etc. This is a little over the top. So let's continue. So we're going to do the one hair follicle wrapped around a finger on a person that matched the person that had worn the clothing recently and it got around their finger. The other one, a person confessing dozens of times, some of them recorded. I don't like that being used, but at that point it's a bit excessive to ignore it, which is the reason I would allow it. Yes, if I was a judge, you'd have a lot of people who made confessions not allowing it because you can't be in any way, shape, or form coerced. It's just too easy to cause abuse here. Let's go on. Murder suspects with no criminal history are 44% of those convicted of murders. And this leans in heavily into people being presumed to have actually been very successful mass murderers or serial killers. Can people without some type of indications and or history with similar behaviors with no criminal history just wake up one day and decide to commit a crime? The answer is yes. 40-something. The age range is abnormal, but there's a bell curve to it, and yeah, that does happen. More accurately, it happens more often a little bit older than that. In 50s, you get a spike in murder cases because people are going through midlife crises, and instead of buying a really cheap, Porsche, they do something else. Could someone under any of these conditions abduct and murder two healthy adolescents in broad daylight versus threatening them, leading them off somewhere, and killing them for whatever reason we haven't been given? If you believe that, then it's probably a good thing you can't see the expression in my face. And now we're going to get into some of the things stated, not to me, but to other people in the comment section by this person. I'm not trying to be mean to you, but you need to cool it. In response to people agreeing with my video, try doing some actual research before you open your yap. Clearly you have no idea what you're talking about. I will choose to ignore your asinine comment. You're failing at that. Sorry, some of us critical thinkers still exist to annoy you blind sheep. It's not a bad thing to ask questions. You should try it sometime instead of swallowing the BS shoveled in your mouths by mainstream media on a regular basis. Just saying. Also, some kind of side view, kind of, side glare commentary almost seeming to come towards me, but I'm not going to say that that's happening because I don't know. But a statement. I have 101 reasons not to trust what I'm being told about this case. Then I would have to do 101 debunkings, or you might have a bias. I don't know the answers here. I do agree that Richard Allen's confessions, I would have, but at 61 times, this is a bit excessive. And you don't need the photo to be fake, thank you. I don't need it to be answered a certain way, but you do seem to have a bias here. That's all I'm saying. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. I hope that this video has been useful to some of you, hopefully all of you. Good day.